Hey everyone, and welcome to another episode of the East Coast Rams podcast. I am your co-host Ashton with my awesome co-host Zach. Oh man, Zach, how are you doing?
Well, it's for as a Rams fan, not very good. Um, yeah, that's about all I can say about it. That's the nicest thing I can say is it's just not going great. Other than that, I'm doing fine. Trying to hang in there, trying to find some enjoyment in other areas of life other than Rams football. Um, yeah, how are you doing?
Crying inside a little, having to rewatch the Super Bowl highlights to get my spirits up and think of greener pastures.
I keep
Oh
going on Fanatics
man.
and looking at that $11,000 ring that you can buy. Not in any way, shape, or form could I ever afford that, but it's nice to look at
Uh,
that you can possibly afford, a Super Bowl ring because we're definitely looking like we're not getting back to that anytime, you know, soon.
Well, to be honest, the Rams should be paying us to watch these games.
Well, that's for sure. That
They
is
are
for sure.
not good, Zach. So let's kind of break down this battle of backup QBs where we got dotted up uh, completely. Oh, dude, I can't even think of their
This
backup
is one of the
QB's
one
name.
games where sorry. This was one of the one games where the defense just did not help us one bit. This was a game where the offense wasn't doing anything, the defense wasn't doing anything. We just couldn't really get anything going, and we let an Arizona team that has a backup QB just kind of run the game. He didn't play necessarily very well, but he managed the game well enough to keep the ball out of the hands of our offense. Our offense couldn't keep the ball when they did get it, and the defense just I don't know. I don't know if if they're starting to give up on themselves or what, but just this team is just seems like it's falling apart completely.
Yeah, it kind of drives me nuts when you clearly see something not working. And like at that point, like no one's gonna blame you if you start throwing stuff against the wall to see if it works, right?
Yeah, of
If
course.
your
Yeah, I
wide
mean that's
receivers if your wide receivers aren't getting open, try to throw McCutcheons in there and just see what he can do. Like if he doesn't get open, that's not any worse than what you're seeing. If you see that Wolford is just struggling the whole match to even make decent reads or get out of the pocket, put in Perkins. Like, I don't see the point of just sitting there and just watching your offense struggle with John Wolford. And, the sad part is, Zach, it looks like, depending on how you read into Kelly Stafford's comments on her podcast, that Stafford may hold out longer because of like concussion. And I don't have any judgment. I'm player first. If they feel like that's the best thing for his health, that go for it. Um,
yeah, and I had it later down in our notes, but we can talk about it now. For him, it's weird because no one has actually come out and said that he has a concussion. Um, even Jordan Rodriguez from the with the Athletic even asked him directly today if Stafford has a concussion, and he says he is not aware or doesn't have that answer. And that's kind of weird when someone's been in a protocol now for over a week. They've missed a game because of this, and yes, if, I listened to Kelly's podcast as well, and I don't remember her actually saying that he had a concussion other than like he's in a hyperbolic chamber every night, when he gets home from, from the practice field or whatever, or whatever he's doing to help with this. But it's just an interesting situation where they're putting this under a concussion protocol, but no one seems to be coming out saying he's actually had a concussion.
yeah, I don't know what's going on with this whole situation. Rams and injuries. don't try to think about it. Like, I'm just gonna take Stafford's word for it that he has a concussion. I want him to be safe. I want him to take time, get scans, make sure there's no like injury, and it can be serious. You can get nerve damage. You can have serious brain damage too if you get multiple concussions in a short time span. So you got to take it seriously.
Yeah, and
So I,
listening to the podcast, I mean, it sounded like Stafford's one of those dudes. Like, I mean, he's been through a lot. He went through hell and back in Detroit, and like if he could be on the field, he could be on the field. But when in the podcast, Kelly kind of says that Matthew kind of went to her and it's like, I just don't feel right. And when someone comes to you and says I don't feel right, when they're you think they're the toughest person in the world and would you know battle for this team, whatever. I mean, you got to take that seriously. And obviously, players' health comes first, and team success comes second in this whole scenario. So
and it
hopefully he
makes
gets
sense
better soon.
too. He's been what, the second, third most sacked QB in the league? Like, and he's older
Yeah,
now.
which
It's not
yeah,
like 5, 6 years ago when he was getting sacked when he was younger and like your body can just recover quickly. It's gonna take a toll on him, and this is not the type of offensive situation that an older QB who is more pocket dependent needs to deal with.
yeah. But I guess kind of getting back to the game a little bit, the first drive was actually not terrible. It wasn't great because it ended up in a field goal, but it wasn't the worst drive in the world. I think the problem was is that it was 14 plays, which kind of took up the whole the Rams kind of scripted plays away all in the first drive. Um, and then after that, there was just nothing moving until the third quarter, really. Um, so what was your kind of experience in the first half? I mean, yeah, we got points on the board, which seems like we haven't been doing in the last several weeks. At least we moved the ball a little bit. And I think we all had a little bit of hope, but then they just kind of went backwards and they stopped running the ball and they just kept throwing the ball. And when you have a backup quarterback, you should be running it more than you're throwing it. And the Rams still are so pass heavy that they couldn't get anything going.
Uh, yeah, typically you have to remember our first drive is a scripted drive, right?
Hmm.
Um, Zach, after that first scripted drive, do you want to know how many combined yards we got after that drive?
Give it to me.
Mm. We got a combined 11 yards and a fumble
Yeah,
in
I
a
mean, that's
half
not surprising. I mean,
after that one drive.
I think we were what the next three drives we were three and out, and then it came on and then I think that fourth one was the fumble.
Yeah.
So it's bad. I mean, the offense is bad. Doesn't matter who's in the quarterback position right now. Um, I mean, and it's the backup quarterback, and me and we've discussed this on this pod and previous that Wolford isn't the solution. Um, we all kept, and a lot of Rams fans are kind of out there thinking that Perkins should be in this game, and he was a
And
little bit,
Perkins
but
may not work out, right? Like, me and you will fully acknowledge, like, Perkins could be worse than Wolford, but you don't know that. And that's the thing. It's like, you see Wolford struggling, and you only get one good drive. That's your scripted drive coming into the game, and you're down 17-3. You put Perkins in, and you just see, right?
yeah,
Like,
and
what's the worst that could happen?
they kept putting, so Perkins was in multiple times throughout this game, um, but they just kept doing it. He only had one throwing pass, um, and it didn't. I mean, I think it was a lateral pass, and it went backwards. I mean, it was like -3 yards. So which is fine, but when you put somebody out there and now he's only going to be your runner quarterback, you're just swapping him out for runner quarterback. It's like the
That
other team is going
is
to figure that out and they're
It
going to
drives
stomp it.
me nuts.
Like,
It's the same thing with our running backs. It's like when Henderson is in 90% of the time he's catching the ball. When Akers is in, he's running, right? Like I just, I don't see how they don't get that it's completely predictable.
Yeah.
Unless if the other guys can completely not do the opposite thing at all. And
I mean,
that's possible, right? Like,
yeah. I mean, give the Rams credit. They tried to come back. In the third quarter, we thought that there was some momentum going, especially when, they did drive the ball down, and Henderson got in for that 4 yard run, and it was a 7 point game. Um, we thought we were getting some momentum there, and then the defense just they couldn't hold it in, and that's where we kind of saw the biggest fall was at that point when they were able to get in for another touchdown and put it a 14-point game.
yeah,
And then we had a crappy you know garbage time touchdown, which was the first time that we saw Kyron Williams this entire game, and which is just again kind of heartbreaking into that fact that we didn't even try anything new. If any of the games where you didn't have your top quarterback in, things aren't working, try something new, throw something else at the wall and see if it sticks. And to be fair to Kyron, he had at least a decent performance in those few snaps that he had.
I don't see the point of like not playing Kyron when we have the worst running back room in the league. Like it just boggles my mind, Zach, that you keep on giving like carries to Cam Akers. He's getting like less than 2 yards a carry or like less than 2.5. And you have this running back come back and you don't use him. Like you don't even try to give him carries and see if he's hot for this first game back. If he's
Yeah,
hungry, right?
yeah. And I mean, he seemed to. I mean, and I think that, when we look at this game, and it would be kind of good to look back. I was listening to the 11 Personnel pod, and they were talking about the connection that Wolford has with A Rob, and because Stafford didn't get to do all the snaps. Wolford was the quarterback pretty much for Robinson during spring training and stuff like that. So they have a bigger connection than Stafford and A Rob. Um, I'd be curious to know if Wolford has that kind of same dynamic with Kyron Williams, just because he felt more comfortable, especially in those that last 4 minute drive of getting the ball to him. And he rushed that one for 9 yards and then had 3 receptions for a total of 30 yards. He was the third best receiver of the game, and he only played the last 4 minutes. Like, that's absurd. Absurd.
Mm.
So I would be curious to know, like, depending on how the situation goes with Stafford,
Y-
that if he's in this week, if we see a little bit more Kyron Williams and see if there's a more of this passing rushing game with him.
Yeah, stats wise, Wolford goes for 200 yards, gets his first NFL touchdown after playing in 4 games. It's not good.
Which
Um,
was that garbage down touchdown to. I mean, it was great that he got a touchdown. You never want to take that away from a player, but it was in garbage time. There wasn't much time left on the clock, and but glad to see Wolford back out there and Van Jefferson getting that touchdown. Hopefully that boosts both of their confidence up a little bit.
so Akers 6 yards, 6 rushes, 22 yards. So I will give him credit. His average wasn't awful this game. It was 3.7. I'll correct my kind of criticism there for this game. He still didn't look great in this game, but apparently he did better than I thought he did. And then Henderson got 6 rushes for 21 yards, 3.5. It's just both bad, just not good. And then Kyron Williams, 1 rush, 9 yards, and then 3 receptions for 30 yards. And he only played 1 drive. So he was more productive than both of the other running backs who got triple the snaps and quadruple the drives.
Yeah. Um, yeah, I mean Higby had an okay had a a pretty good game as far as his reception yards, and Robinson had a few good catches, especially when they needed it from Wolford. So those were the only positive things. Um, Cup obviously not getting what he normally gets from his star quarterback. So because he didn't have a star quarterback in. So -1 yards is kind of painful for him. Plus, obviously, Wolford's two bad overthrow passes, one going to Cup, which caused him to be injured and be on the sidelines for several minutes without getting up. Um, which we'll talk about here in just a few.
Yeah, it was pretty clear. Wolford was just all over the place with his passing. He had some good ones. He had some really atrocious, ooh, like, I don't
Yeah,
know if
and
you should be in the NFL.
yeah, and I don't know. It's just maybe he's just so not used to being so Like, I mean, when he's in like the practice, I mean, I'm sure he's not as. I know he's with the first defense team, but at the same time, like, he's probably not getting pressured. I mean, obviously, he's not getting pressured as if it was a real NFL game week to week. He's more in a comfort level. They're not going to tackle him, things like that. So he's a little bit more comfortable. Well, when you guys running after you, and he was running a lot that game. He just never looked comfortable in the pocket, and just kind of. I mean, it was a disappointing game all in all, as far as the offense goes, as per usual. Going into week 10.
hmm Uh,
Um,
and just a slight note, defense, it it's been good all year, but it had its second worst. Uh, yeah, I would say second worst game of the season.
yeah, I
It's
mean, if
pretty
not the
bad.
worst, I mean, it was pretty bad. I mean, you had a backup quarterback in, and you could not throw him off. Like, it just felt like they let Colt McCoy get too comfortable, and that's not usually how
If
the
there's a
Rams
game
play.
you should play man a lot in, it's against Colt McCoy.
For sure. And when I really was watching this game, I noticed that they were playing a little bit more man. I think there was a lot of criticism of the last several weeks. Ramsey went on a rant all last week about people just don't know don't know the defense. Raheem Morris is, he's great, and I completely agree with everything that Ramsey said. Um, but it kind of makes you think that maybe they were listening a little bit, and so they tried to do a little bit more on top of do a little bit more man coverage on a few of those drives, for some success, for some not. But I think what Raheem Morris has been doing, previous to this game, has worked. And they need to kind of stick to that. And yes, they need to make adjustments. They need to make sure they get their tackles, because that's the problem. If they miss their tackle, then what they did was really for nothing, and that's how they get the exploding plays. They can contain, but if somebody breaks that little containment box, then it can become explosive.
hmm so let's talk about injuries, because surprise, surprise, Zach, we got more injuries. Cooper Cup, high ankle sprain. He's going to be out for around 4 weeks. My guess, Zach, and tell me if you disagree. I think if we don't win all 4 games, he's probably not going to be back for the rest of the season.
Yeah, I mean, I think it all depends on how this recovery goes and how the um, looks.
Of
You
course,
know,
yeah. No
if
setback.
he's if yeah, if I feel like, even if I don't know, it's one of those things where, like, if he is completely fine in 4 weeks, I don't see. It makes it really hard to put on your team, like, oh yeah, he's fine. We're just not going to play him, but we're still going to play you, Jalen Ramsey. We're still going to play you, Matthew Stafford. We're still going to play you, Aaron Donald. We're still going to play, our top five people, but we're going to leave Cooper Cup out. Like, that's a kind of a sting to your team. And not saying that the Rams would do this or anything like that, but if it's more looking like, this is going to be depleted, maybe they just, the rehab is just going to take a little bit longer. You know what I'm saying? that this 4 weeks is kind of like the minimum, but it could extend it very easily to more of a recovery type spot. So um, I could just see them kind of playing that card as, yeah, it's 4 weeks. If some miracle they're 4 weeks in and they're great, great for us, but it's not looking like that. So I could see this more looking like 6 weeks, and if it's more like 6 weeks, then I probably could see him not playing the last two. And at that point,
So alert.
they may pull Ramsey and Donald, depending on if that's what they want to do.
Yeah. So Alert Jackson had blood clots, and he's going to be out for the rest of the season. That's sad to see. He was terrific starting at left tackle. Chandler Brewer is also out after suffering MCL, and he's going to be out for around 6 weeks, so a majority of the rest of the season. So 4 to 6 weeks, they said. Yeah, apparently we should be getting David Edwards back, which, uh, please just, I, I want a different left guard.
Yep, we can
Yeah,
all hope for David Edwards' quick return.
yeah. Uh,
And
that's
then
about
obviously
all
we kind of,
the,
yeah, we talked about Stafford, so we can kind of move on from that. Hopefully he'll be back, but it's still very unclear on what that situation looks like.
yeah. We'll see about how that goes. The Saints are 3-7, so they're worse than us, kinda. Don't know if it'll be Andy Dalton or Jameis Winston. Zach, how are you feeling about going against the New Orleans Saints? A rematch of the 2018 NFC Championship.
Yeah, it doesn't really kind of seem like the same kind of game. Completely different quarterbacks, completely different, mostly offense and defenses. Um, in this game, I mean, at that game, we didn't even have Cooper Kupp. He was on the sidelines. Um, and, we weren't up against Drew Brees, which was that his final year, or did he have one more year? I think he had maybe one more year after that. Um, but yeah, it's going to be interesting. I'm not really sure how this is going to look. I mean, it really depends on if we're going to have our quarterback back, um, and if so, what that means for our offense. I know all things run through Cooper Cup, but someone else is going to have to step up in this game. Whether that's A Rob, I know Van Jefferson's probably going to have to take in some of more of the Cooper Cup roles, and Skoranek will probably have to step up a lot more too. So I could, we may see McCutcheon coming in there um, and getting some reps into. So really looking, I really want to see what this can do. And this is another opportunity for the Rams to just throw something at the wall and see what works. Like I said, I think we really want to see what Kyrie Williams has to offer. I know you may want to try to hold that back as much as you can so that you don't injure, him again. But at this point, you need to see something out of him. You don't want to just wait a whole season just to see if he's going to be able to do something next year. You need to know what to do now so that you can fix the problem next year. Um, so I really hope this is a game where we're trying to fix things, even if it may not help this year. We need to know how we're going to fix this offense. Like I said, the defense, yes, they have its issues, but I think the offense is really where we need to start feeling like we need to start picking and choosing who's going to stay on this team and who's not for next year. What about you? How are you feeling?
Uh, I mean, the Saints, they have an average defense and their offense is below average. So I feel like they're more balanced than us. It's gonna come down to, can our defense force turnovers? Like that's how we're gonna win against better teams. Zach, I think against the Saints, depending on if our offense can do anything and if Stafford's in or not. If Stafford isn't in, I think our defense is going to have to score. And then if Stafford's in, then I think we should be able to eke out a win. But I've thought that for 2 weeks, and it has not worked out.
Yeah, I mean, when you look at the stats, I mean, the Rams are only putting up 16.4 points a game. Saints are putting up 22 points a game. Points allowed per game, Rams are at that 22.2 points per game, but the Saints are giving up 24.7 points a game. So we'll see how that works if that works in our favor or not. Um, right now, it looks like it's kind of leaning more towards the Saints on winning, especially since Cooper Kupp, most likely because they were favored, I think, right after the game ended on Sunday, but probably because of the Cooper Kupp news and the uncertainty with Matthew Stafford, that has now gone back into the Saints' favor. So Saints are now -4.
Mm.
So who knows what's going to happen with this game? I think at this point, predictions are kind of out of the way. I would love for the Rams to win this one, but there's just still so much uncertainty on um, on what to do.
Yeah, man. It's uh don't know. Quick chat, do you think AD retires after this season?
I felt like I felt like the deal was is that he got it like I think he has like 3 years left on his contract and he was going to play for at least the next two. I think that was what the goal was, but we'll see. Um, I probably should go back and watch the game closely. I think I saw some things going across the Twitter about it didn't seem like he was playing as much fire towards the end of the game. Um, and maybe that's true, maybe that's not true. I guess we'll kind of see. I'm sure he'll have some. Usually, he has at least one press conference a week, so we'll kind of see what he says go moving forward. Um, but I just want this team is a good solid team as a whole. They're dealing with a lot of injuries, and that's just it's just depleting this team that has all the potential in the world. And kind of how we kind of described this podcast, and the title up that I kind of came up with was for a fall from the top, and it's not by the lack of trying. I just think that they just got put into a bad circumstance of just all these injuries, and everything is just they can't get a running game going, whether that's the running back's fault or the O-line's fault or a mix of both or a mix of the play calling. um, there's a lot of problems that I think can be going on right now, and we got to get it fixed. The play calling isn't great. I don't know how you've been feeling about that, but it's just, I mean, we've kind of mentioned it. We just keep throwing the ball. We're not even trying to run the ball anymore. Like, do something different. Do something. Do a reverse jet sweep. Do something creative.
Yeah, man, it's
But I don't. I personally, answering your question, I don't think Aaron Donald's going to retire this year. I think we still get him for one more year and see if we can really try to truly, I guess we wouldn't really run it back this year, or run it back, but hopefully, make another run for the Super Bowl.
yeah,
What
it's
about
gonna
you?
be interesting in the off season. If I don't think he will, but it'll be interesting how aggressive this team is. Like, there's two different directions you can take next year. You can either completely sell out for your last year with probably McVay, with AD, uh, with those two and some of your core pieces, and Stafford. You're probably not going to get much more out of those three guys. Do you completely sell out and sell more for a second ring, or do you start the just you don't do anything? You have a lackluster season next year, and you start to load up to start rebuilding. Like, that's those the front office going to have to think about that. It's not easy because in order to reload, during the off season, you're going to have to use capital to do that.
I mean, I
That's
think
probably going to include trades.
I mean, a lot of people are kind of complaining about this season. They're like, how can we go from what we did last year to this year? And again, would you trade it if you knew what this outcome was going to be? Would you trade it for the ring? Like, if you were like, oh well, we want them to go to the playoffs every year, um, blah blah blah, but they never make it to the Super Bowl or they never win the Super Bowl. Is that worth it, or what they did last year, is that worth it? Like, I know we want to try to go back every year, but there's 32 teams that people are going to figure things out. Things are going to change. And, we have to realize that you have a 1 in 32 chance of winning the Super Bowl every year. And that you're not guaranteed that, even if you have the star players. I mean, the Rams have star players. Tampa Bay has star players. Um, you look across the league, there are star players across this whole entire league, and yet they are doing as bad as us, maybe slightly better, but they're not at the top. Everyone thought the Bills were this amazing team, and they just lost to the Commanders on Monday Night Football. So it's just one of those things where you never know. This is a football game of uncertainty. It could be because of the refs, it could be because of injuries, it could be because of 100 million different things. And you take the wins when you get it, you take it when it's not, and it's hard to ridicule and be hateful and things like that when this team is doing everything they can to try to win. It's something is not working, and they need to try to get it fixed. I'll stop ranting.
No, I think we all need a good little rant, some venting. This team has been frustrating this year. It's been really, really bad. I thought the offense coming into this year was gonna potentially be a little bit better, and the defense was gonna be a little bit worse, and it's been the exact opposite. Uh, I would say defense is exactly what it was during the playoffs. Uh, Outside of being a little bit worse with turnovers. But yeah, guys, it's a rough season. It's very, very, very unlikely we make the playoffs. We would have to make a 4 or 5 game run. Starting now, we probably could lose one, maybe two more games max rest of the season. Uh, it's going to be very hard if we lose two or more. Uh, but we'll see. So
Just remember, I mean, I don't know. I mean, every Rams fan has their own story of when they started following the Rams. I kind of I was not a fan of the Rams when they won the Super Bowl in St. Louis, but that's when I started becoming a fan of them. Was right after that fact. That's when they got me. Is kind of when they won the Super Bowl. So I'm hoping people take that and understand that you don't win the Super Bowl every year. I mean, other than if you're Tom Brady, you can win a lot, but that's a rarity. That doesn't really happen. The 49ers had a dynasty back in the 80s and before that, and so it's been 30 years since they've seen a Super Bowl ring. So um, there's going to be bad years. I went through a lot of bad years, being with Jeff Fisher and, that kind of implosion of things. So things will get better. We're going to push it through. Um, let's take what we have right now. We still have Aaron Donald. We still have, the best defensive player in the league. We've gotten to see Cooper Kupp, the Triple Crown winner. We got to see them win a Super Bowl last year. We have a top talented quarterback in Matthew Stafford. We have Jalen Ramsey. I mean, this team is it's fun to know that we have these players on that team alone. So think about that, not just always what the performance is on the field, and just try to enjoy it and try to enjoy every moment that you have while we have these players. We won't always have Aaron Donald. We won't always have Cooper Kupp. We won't always have Jalen Ramsey. So enjoy the players while we have them now. Hopefully, key players we'll see new stars emerge eventually. But for now, enjoy what we have, and let's just try to stay positive as best we can. Got any final marks before we close up this pod. It's kind of a shorter episode this week, even though I feel like I went on 10-minute monologues.
No, no, man. There's not much to say. Rams not giving us a lot of a lot of things to speak about.
For sure, for sure. And like I said, we're handling through it. It was a fun season last year, and it feels super. It seems super lackluster just because of um, how things are going. But um, yeah, we'll see how things go. But I'm gonna stay positive. I'm gonna still cheer on the Rams. I'm still gonna wear my Rams jersey every Sunday. Kind of have to change things up. I did forget to say I will blame this season on myself for the epic loss because every time I buy the jersey of the quarterback, our team usually stinks. So I will take full. You can
Mm,
blame me for this rough season because I had to buy a Stafford Super Bowl jersey. Um, so you guys can blame me for it. It happened when right after the Rams went to the Super Bowl, I bought a Color Rush Goff jersey, and then we saw how that turned out the following year. And then my first my one of my first jerseys was a Bradford jersey, and all of a sudden that was a bad idea too. So I've not had best luck. So for now on, I will never buy a
mm,
QB jersey ever again to try to sustain us from
yeah.
this pain.
And guys, don't worry because in 4 weeks we're coming up to the 1 year anniversary of the pod. So we'll probably do something nice anniversary episode. Hopefully the team is doing better by then, but we'll see. But it was pretty cool, and we'll talk more about that when that happens. But just December 17th last year, so we're coming up on it, Zach.
Super exciting. I think that was. I think was it the Seahawks? Was that our first one after the
Cardinals.
Seahawks? Oh,
That's
was it after the
when
Cardinals
the
game?
Yeah, that's when we had a lot of the team out because of COVID,
Oh, yes.
and
Okay.
we still won.
Okay. Man, reminisce. I'm gonna have to go back through some of our first scripts to kind of see what we all talked about at that point. But it was a fun run for our opening season of the East Coast Rams podcast. Um,
Mm.
so I think that's going to do it for this week's episode of the East Coast Rams podcast. Please like, share, and subscribe the pod. A reminder that we are also on YouTube now, so please subscribe to our channel, youtube.com/at East Coast Rams, the new handle system of YouTube. You can always send questions and feedback to feedback at eastcoastrams.com or hit us up on Twitter. Our ECR Twitter account is at East Coast Rams. Ashton, where can people find and connect with you?
You can find me at RamFanAshton1 on Twitter.
And you can find me at Zac Mayer. Um, Big shout out to everyone who subscribes and listens to the pod, um, and especially interacts with us on Twitter. It's really fun. I say this every week. It's super fun getting to know different Rams fans and get to interact with them. So yeah, definitely please reach out to us, connect with us. We really like to hang out with other fans, not just if you're from the East Coast side, Midwest, Central Plains area, Great Lakes region, the South, and then obviously our West Coast pals in LA. So really connect with us wherever you're at. We want this to be a united front, a global podcast where we really reach out to everyone from the Ramily. So let's hope the Rams finally get it done this Sunday up against the Saints at the Saints. So with that, we'll close out the podcast. Horns up, everybody.